Hello, I'm Kathleen Babe. We're having some in-depth conversations with superintendents across the country. And with us this morning, we're truly lucky, is the 2024 Superintendent of the Year named just last night, Dr. Joe Gothard. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a really big honor. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you prepare being a finalist that your name might get called, but it still doesn't sink in until you hear your name and stand on the stage and with so many other great leaders and share a little bit of your story and your journey and accepting the award. It's really a great honor.
Spoken like a true modest Midwestern boy. You're in charge of St. Paul Public Schools. I should mention that, out of the beautiful state of Minnesota. Tell us about that journey that you shared with people when you accepted that award.
Well, first, I'm a public school product who grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and took a little bit of a non-traditional pathway to the superintendency. Found my way out of college, not doing well in school, and figuring out what my next steps were going to be when I started working as an educational assistant in my home district. So from a paraeducator, having teachers there encourage me to finish my degree, I took their advice, and the rest is history. I've been a biology teacher, a principal, assistant principal, assistant superintendent before, leaving the state of Wisconsin to come to Minnesota, where I've been a superintendent in 2 districts for 11 years now.
Well, when you're given an award like this, it's not by accident. What was it that you think, the programs you initiated or things that you've done, that got you this kind of recognition?
We serve such a special and diverse community in St. Paul Public Schools, more than 125 languages, cultures, and expectations and lived experiences that are just so vastly different. And until you really listen to people and understand what they want, and set up systems and structures to act on some of that, I think it's really meaningful work. And one of the things that we did this year is a group of Somali families and staff wanted to create a Somali language class for our schools. But instead they came together and we had an empty building and we decided that we're going to create a school for East African students where we can study the language and culture. And the result of that is opening up a school that is now 240 students, has a waiting list for pre-K, and has the complete support of the community. And, when you ask community what they want and they can do and support them in what they want, special things can happen.
Yeah, that sounds like a beautiful experience to witness and for the other students.
Right.
Well, tell us about some of the programs, too, that you're most proud of in your school district.
I think the first thing is our strategic plan, which, shouldn't surprise anyone, but ours has been the guiding light really since 2018, through a pandemic, through some really challenging times, but it always served as a place for us to focus and anchor our work. And achieves is a very intentional term because I wanted achievement to be in our strategic plan. I want families and the community to know that we have high expectations for student achievement. But from that, we've also had to build other iterations. So we've had an envision process where, with declining enrollment over years, we had to close 6 buildings and merge some of our schools and create new programs and new innovation. We've had more than $500 million in renovation done in the last 5 years. So we have a plan that guides that work. Those are just some examples of the strategic and structural things that we have to change. Our focus back in the classroom, however, is again, listening to our community and valuing what they want and ensuring that we can meet the individual needs of students.
And you must be able to relate to students who aren't doing as well in school. I find that very fascinating about your background to where you ended up. Talk about that and how it shaped how you lead this district.
So I'll give an example. 3 years ago, we had one of our schools I was struggling and I was getting regular emails saying it's unsafe, doesn't feel good here. So I started spending time in the school and looking at some of the system structures and learning that it really wasn't about the kids. It was more about how they could connect and work together. So instead of just, directing other people to get in there and make change, I started a boys group there and I meet every other week with a group of 12 African-American boys in my second year of doing it. And it's a safe place and a space for us to talk about challenges that they're facing, sometimes in the community, sometimes in a class, sometimes in a hallway, sometimes things at home. But these are all things that I always talk about students wear in their emotional backpack that sometimes get in the way of being a successful student, getting through the day without getting in trouble, or, being written up for some kind of misbehavior. Students want to be heard. They want to be supported, but more than anything, they want to be believed in by adults. They really do. They want high expectations, but with high expectations, high support needs to be in place as well.
And to borrow a phrase from them, perhaps you have some street cred because they know that this wasn't necessarily a straight line for you.
And I show up in a suit, of course, my uniform, but I talk very openly and authentically about some of the challenges I faced. I would never say that mine are the same as theirs, but I do tell them I understand, I relate, I see you, I hear you, I value you, and we're going to work together to figure this out.
What are some of your top priorities as you move forward in the 2024 school year?
I think the biggest challenge for us, so knowing that we've been able to rely on this influx of money that we've never gotten before, it's going to be really challenging because we've done a lot of really good work with that funding. We had several years of declining enrollment. So we've had to make some of the adjustments I mentioned, the school closures and mergers, because of that. Public schools and the way that they're seen by society right now, I think are under attack, and I hate to overuse that, but they are in ways that they weren't always. And defending the right for students to learn at their highest level takes up a lot of time, but it's such worthy work, whether we're advocating for funding, or we're advocating for community safety, or we're advocating for the programs like I mentioned that value, the unique gifts or assets of our students and community members.
Well, you mentioned the pandemic and the relief funds expiring. Talk about the challenges for teachers and certainly administrators as well about that gap in teaching and instruction and students having to play catch up, because that's been a huge stressor for everybody involved.
It is, Kathleen, and a few things I'll mention about that. First, a lot of mention is around pre-pandemic levels of achievement. And I'm leery of that because I could look at pre-pandemic levels of achievement and see historical underachievement and underserving of children because our Black, Latinx, ELL students receiving special education, were not achieving at the level that any of us should be satisfied with pre-pandemic. So I want to be a little bit cautious in going to pre-pandemic. So we know that the only way that we can help students achieve is to provide them great support, do it consistently, and ensure that students are coming to school and they're ready to learn. And some of the barriers we face in public ed is some of the challenges students bring to us each and every day. The social emotional learning aspect of what we do is more important today than ever before. A child that is unsure, or a child that isn't sleeping, a child that may be unhoused. These are all things that children in all of our schools face every day. And for us to say that reading, writing, and arithmetic are the most important things, they are, but it's in addition to addressing some of the other things that the whole child needs to be successful.
How are you addressing the rapidly changing state of education with technology and artificial intelligence?
It's a great question. I guess I didn't realize it had taken over so much until some of our apps went down in our district, or somebody forgot to perhaps pay for the subscription. And all of a sudden I started to get all these emails about why did you shut off, access to XYZ? Not realizing just how important it's become. It's not just this nice thing to have. It's become a daily routine for the way that teachers and students are interacting around learning. I don't claim to be an expert in AI. I just know that my job is to support our teachers and provide them the tools to help them be the best for students. So I think it's going to become more and more important. And of course, we're also in this dynamic time that I don't think we've ever experienced in society, where we used to say the jobs that exist in the future or the jobs of the future don't exist today. I mean, we're creating the jobs of the future every day. And a lot of times it's by young people who aren't much older than the students we're serving. So I find that conflict at times in terms of schools were set up to prepare students for jobs of yesterday, knowing that in today's society, it might not be relevant. We've got a lot of work to do. Interrogating our systems and the way we've done things is important work that needs to take place. And I'd like to say we have time to do it, but we really don't. It has to happen.
So how do you support teachers as they have their traditional teaching methods that they went to school for and studied and all of that? And how do you marry that with the technology that they even have to be up to speed on now?
the one thing I found with teachers that doesn't work is telling them what to do. I think, kind of top down or district administration directives or edicts are not the best way. So I talked about student voice earlier. I think teacher and staff voice is important too. And I don't think you can ever do enough of it. I don't think any teacher would ever say they're heard enough. But finding places and spaces to do that and to perhaps give some empowerment to teachers where there are some choices and allowing them to decide in cases that we can. We're a large district of 68 schools. So while I don't want to be one size fits all, a lot of our systems and structures are just for efficiency purpose. But within that, I do want to empower each of our school sites to build on the expertise of the teachers and staff that they have and be able to support that and know that if we're focusing on long-term student outcomes, that there are many ways to do that. I just want to be able to support it as a district leader, knowing that sustained effort is really important.
Well, that seems like a natural segue to ask you about your leadership philosophy.
I think I've learned a lot. I've been humbled a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes and failures, and I've learned an extreme amount. We had a stretch back in 2020 where right after this conference, in fact, in San Diego, we had a 5-day teacher strike. We were right into the pandemic. We lost our board chair to COVID, 31 years old. And George Floyd was murdered 9 miles from my office. This all happened within a window of 2.5 months. So you learn a lot about yourself as a leader when you're going through things like that you can't control. And you have all these emotions around you. And at a time where we were in the pandemic and really isolated from each other, it was really hard. And relying on our team, relying on the community, our community partners, it just made me realize to see our community in a different way. And I've said often in St. Paul, if I judged the satisfaction or outcomes of my work by how much people care, it'd be a pretty high mark. Now, everybody can care. Getting folks to care about the right thing and supporting that sustained effort is challenging. The needs and desires of people are different, and I respect that. But I think the way that I lead is authentically, humility, vulnerability, and being present. Being tall and bald with a white beard, I can't hide. So I do try to be as present as I can in our schools and our community. I live right in the heart of our community, and it means a lot to me to be a member of our school community.
How has the job and the role since you've been superintendent evolved over the course of that time?
I think it's always evolving right now, and I think that's due in part to boards are changing. People aren't raising their hand to be members of school boards, or they are because they have a platform, that they want to bring. So it's created this divisiveness in a lot of communities where I think that's the greatest challenge. So where the work might not change, certainly one or two board members may drastically change what your job as a superintendent looks like day to day. I think those are some of the biggest challenges. Outside of that, I think student mental health and I think school and community safety are, right up there with advocating for funding, but I think are right next to it, 2 and 3, the challenges that we're facing today. Our kids are being raised in a society that is always changing. Everything's on the record, recorded, messages coming from social media, pressures that they have, the level of economics in communities is, especially right now coming out of the pandemic, the world of work is drastically different. So these changes tend to truly impact those who are most vulnerable. And we serve a community that 70% qualify for free reduced price meals. So I understand that a lot of the technical work I do doesn't really mean much to a family who's struggling. A family who may not even know there's a superintendent in a district. They just know that they've got to get their child to school and that they'll be there at 3:00 to pick him or her up and hope they had a great day.
Yeah, I think you could ask most families, adults or children, what a superintendent does, and most don't know.
Correct. Yeah, it's, third graders will ask sometimes, so I explain a school board and elections and voting is important, and they pick one employee, and that's me. But I think the job has changed as well, just in terms of the expectations of superintendents being present in the community. And that's times of celebration, which are great, but it's also times of tragedy, which are really hard as well, and everything in between.
You mentioned some of the greatest challenges you face in this role. What about the opportunities?
If you're not thinking about innovation as a school leader today and seizing that opportunity, I think you're really missing out on perhaps some of the greatest chances to improve public education. And I think listening to the community is more important than ever before. I mean, we're taught to be the experts. We're taught to be the researchers and collaborate with the researchers to make the decisions. But our communities are not wired that way. They probably weren't 20 years ago or 50 years ago. They're certainly not today. They want to be part of, in fact, their demands are such that they want to be part of the change and ensure that students are being seen and valued and supported in the way that's best for their families or for their values. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the values that communities hold to really find places of great collaboration and doing great work in service of students. The other opportunities I think are around, artificial intelligence and technology, and looking for ways to create relevancy in the courses and pathways we offer that does launch students into having as many decisions as possible post-secondary. That could be 2-year, could be 4-year, could be trades, certifications. And our students are finding out today that, they can make $20, $24 an hour in jobs, and to many, that's incredible for their household. So the world of work is changing. Where it used to be 4-year degree or nothing, now there's a plethora of opportunities for students to enter into the workforce or post-secondary education.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how you're getting them career ready?
Well, a number of ways. We are fortunate to have great support in our community to create pathways. So we have our comprehensive high schools each have, kind of a subgroup of pathways that they offer. 2 years ago, we also created district-wide advanced career pathway center in partnership with 3M and our 2-year college. So it's housed right on the campus of the 2-year college. We plus students there if they choose for half of the day. And for us, it was an equity solution. Knowing that we can't have the comprehensive offerings at each of our schools, we can create a hub of innovation in our district and make it accessible to our students. So that's one way. Outside of that, we have an incredible nonprofit community. So we're doing things. Genesis Work Twin Cities, which I'm on the board for, takes students, 150 from St. Paul Public Schools, and they go through training. They have a summer paid internship, and many of the students are hired in IT career fields in places like Best Buy, Ecolab, Target, who have been just terrific partners. And it's truly looking at identifying underserved and marginalized students, because one of the things I say to our workforce and our CEO boards that I get to spend time with is, this room doesn't look like my classrooms. And there's a problem with that. If I'm truly about preparing our students for unbelievable futures, then we need the workforce to show up in that way as well. And instead of saying there's opportunities, we need invitations, we need support, we need sponsorship. And some of the partnerships I mentioned are doing just that. It's exposing students to fields and people and mentors that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I'm really proud of that work.
Sounds like you really enjoy being a mentor yourself.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I'm a product of it. The community raised me. Coaches, mentors, volunteers, YMCA, our school community rec program. I mean, these are opportunities I look back on that have truly defined me.
And had they not intervened, do you think you'd be on a very different path?
Possibly. Possibly. I was an athlete my whole life, so team meant a lot to me, and it exposed me to just a lot of wonderful people. So I think it was just a number of different variables came together and have guided me in this way.
With everything that teachers have been through, the pandemic and the teacher shortage and some of the criticism as well, do you think it's important to get the message to them that they still matter, that they can make such a difference in a student's life?
Without a doubt. My middle school teacher, I talked about her this morning, Mrs. Bell at Senate Middle School in Madison, stays with me today in my heart, in my head. And, I really work hard because I want to honor the way that she took me in as a 6th grade student. But I also share that we're doing some great work in the science of reading, and the results that I'm seeing are incredible. We have a strategy called WINN, WINN, and it stands for What I Need Now. And we have been able to develop a tier 1 intervention for students that provides them time with a trained teacher to really individualize instruction for them to learn to read. And, I go around to a lot of classrooms, and last year I was so impressed with one that I said, I want to come back next year, except I want to start the year, and I want to come out about every 3 weeks and spend time with this one class so I can see the kind of progress that you get to see. And it has been just so eye-opening for me. One, for me to take a pause and just honor teaching, but two, to see the incredible growth and trust that students have in being challenged and to see them overcome some really complex things. When you're talking about a 6th grade student who has felt that they can't read, so they're in this class, it doesn't feel that way at all. It feels like where students are supposed to be. They're creating community, and they have a teacher who they absolutely respect without question.
Mine was Mrs. Klinger, just to put that on the record. Dorothy Klinger. So what is your best advice for superintendents who are facing a lot of the same headwinds or also opportunities as you?
I think there's a few things. I think being vulnerable in being able to manage complex situations, not shying away from it, know when you have to show up or when somebody else can show up, seizing the opportunity to share the district's vision and to honor those who are helping you establish that. I think too many times our work is one way, and it really shouldn't be. I mean, our work is about community building at any level, whether it's classroom, school, certainly district. I think the other thing is to ensure that superintendents have support networks. The work can be really lonely and isolating, and that's why events like this at AASA are so incredibly important. It's my hope that superintendents have local opportunities like that as well. The one great thing of the pandemic, it did allow us to create Zoom communities that we didn't really have before. Zoom was kind of the thing you did if you had to. And now we can have 50 superintendents from around the country hop on a call and feel like you're connected in ways that you weren't previously. And I do think it's helped us a lot. And it's turned into recovery from pandemic to what's the matter of the day that we want to solve, whether it's negotiating a contract or a safety event that happened and what did you learn from it, crisis communication, certainly advocacy for funding. But these are all ways that we can remain connected, and our organizations help us collaborate. But I would say take it upon yourselves as well to collaborate. And whether you need the support or not, there could be others around you who do. In that way, especially if you're an experienced superintendent, to make sure you're there for others. Build this profession. Just like teaching, there are people who aren't raising their hands to be superintendents as well. And it concerns me from the whole entire system that if we allow the light to dim on public education, it's going to impact all of us. And I don't want to see that happen.
I think it's clear from this conversation why you were recognized as Superintendent of the Year. It's really been enlightening. And I just want to go back before we finish. And what would you say to that 3rd grade student if they ask, what does a superintendent do? What is that job description?
My stock answer is this. I care about all the students in St. Paul Public Schools. Care. That's what the job is. If a student knows they're cared for by the tall man in a suit, that's a good day for me.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed talking to the tall man in the suit. Dr. Joe Gothard, nice to meet you. Congratulations on your recognition.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.